Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Star Trek Voyager all 7 seasons ranked video. In this video I will rank the 7 seasons of Star Trek Voyager from my least favorite to my favorite. Now this video is it's a continuation of, or sort of conclusion of my Star Trek Voyager season by season reviews, where I did a video for each season of Star Trek Voyager where I reviewed every episode of each season. So basically I have covered every episode of Star Trek Voyager in the past 7 months. So this video is the first in a series of 3 videos where I will conclude my coverage of Star Trek Voyager by ranking stuff. So this video is where I'll rank the 7 seasons, and then also this week I'll do my top 30 worst episodes of Voyager and my top 50 best episodes of Voyager. So really covering that. Now for these videos, these are going to be more like really long, sort of off the cuff discussion videos, unlike I have top 10s of Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise and stuff like that out. That's more of a succinct, shorter 10-15 minutes. For these, I have no script. I'm just going to babble on for however long it takes me. So it's going to be like a too long didn't watch sort of thing. So there's other videos that I made that if you're not in for a long, you want something more succinct, you can check these out. But these videos are more of just me wrapping up my Voyager coverage after just watching the entire series. And so it gives me a slightly different perspective on it, because I've done, like I said, I've done the top 10 best episodes before, I've done the top 5 worst episodes before, and I've ranked the 7 seasons of Voyager before in my Star Trek Voyager review. But none of these are going to necessarily add up, or match up, I should say, to the ones I did before. They may come off different, things will be ranked differently, because this is coming off fresh off my rewatch. And to be honest, when I did those other videos, I didn't just rewatch the entire series of Voyager before making those videos, because I didn't really have time. So I was mostly going off of memory of, years ago, episodes I'd seen years ago, where this time I had everything's fresh in my mind. As I said, I started 7 months ago, or I think maybe 8 months now, with season 1, and then just watching every season of Voyager once a month. So it's more fresh in my mind, and I've also taken notes while I was watching it, while it was still fresh in my mind, and to say which episode I like better, or which season I like better. Although if you have, I will say for this video with the seasons, if you have seen my season by season coverage, you could probably guess already what my rankings are going to be, especially like my best, my second best, and my worst, because I pretty much said so in the videos that I did earlier. However, I just thought it would be cool to lay it all out in one video, and I will be treading a lot of ground that I said about each season before, but I don't know, I'm more, like I said, it's just one place for the season by season discussion. Anyway, let me go ahead and start with ranking the 7 seasons of Voyager, and let's start with number 7. Number 7, my least favorite season of Voyager, which is in fact season 3 of Star Trek Voyager. And now this is something that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who has seen my coverage of the earlier seasons, especially my season 3 coverage, because I talked a lot about how I just did not like the season. And it's funny, and I have seen other videos where apparently a lot of people think that the first 2 seasons of Voyager were bad and season 3 was like a recovery. Season 3 was the first good season of Voyager. It was kind of acting like, Next Generation or Deep Space Nine, where both those shows, and Enterprise actually, where all 3 of those shows had really bad first 2 seasons, and then the 3rd season came along and was awesome and one of the best of the entire show, and just really was a huge increase in quality. And some people, I think, are trying to say Voyager is like that, and I cannot disagree with that more. In fact, I think Voyager is the inverse of those other shows, which is why I actually chose to talk about Voyager first, because to me it is, it's the opposite of all the other Star Trek spin-offs. Pretty much all the other Star Trek spin-offs, although it doesn't look like Discovery is going to be like that, because Discovery had a really good first season. But anyway, before Discovery, all the other Star Trek spin-offs had 2 really bad first seasons and then got better in the 3rd season, where I think Voyager was the exact opposite. It had 2 good first 2 seasons and then got horrible in the 3rd season. Now, more specifics about, and I think the more I read about the behind the scenes sort of stuff, it kind of is starting to make a bit more sense to me. And also, I talked about before how this is, the main thing is this is when Michael Piller left the show. And then Michael Piller, he was kind of like the executive producer on the Star Trek shows, but he didn't really he wasn't directly involved the way he had been ever since, season 3 of Next Generation, which was the first good season of Next Generation. So you could say that he was the key element of Star Trek, those Star Trek spinoffs, and after his departure, the show was never good again. Now, there are exceptions, like Deep Space Nine, they had Ira Stephen Bear and Ronald D. Moore, so they actually were fine after Piller left. But Voyager, I think, took a real hit. They came back with season 4, which I'll get to later. But then after that, is you could tell this show was really feeling his departure, and I think that is most true with season 3. Now, apparently, and he is actually, Michael Piller had gone on record saying that he was not happy with season 3, that he left them with instructions and direction to take Voyager, and they pretty much went the opposite way. And here's the thing about reading about the behind the things about season 3 is that apparently they had a plan to continue the story arc with the Kazon and with Seska and with Chakotay's son, and have Ensign Suter be a long-term reoccurring character. If you remember Suter, the psychopath who killed people, and Tuvok gave him a mind meld and he was a changed man, and so it was going to continue off that storyline in season 2, but instead, when Michael Piller left, they sort of they were like, nah, fuck that. They're going to erase all that. So the first episode, Basics Part 2, killed off Suter, killed off Seska. It revealed that the son wasn't actually Chakotay's son, so it was Maj Kolo's son. They moved past Kazon space, so we never see the Kazon again, so they've retconned all of that. Now, as for the Kazon, I can't say that not having them again was a bad thing, because I do think that was part of the reason, is that the producers and the writers saw that people just did not like the Kazon, and the Kazon were not working. It's just, so why are we continuing to put all our eggs in this basket that is failing? In fact, to this day, most people, when they look back at the first 2 seasons of Voyager, I think part of the reason why they say it's bad is because of the Kazon. So I can't really say that it was a bad idea to stop doing the Kazon, but I just hated the way that they just erased everything in the first episode. First off, killing off Suter was a mistake. That was a really interesting character, and it would have been great, actually, to see him continue onward as a recurring character. And killing off Seska, again, she's still known to this day, even by the people who hate the Kazon, as the best villain character that Voyager has had. Now, it would be difficult to continue Seska without the Kazon, but I don't know. I think they could have pulled it off maybe by having her as a prisoner in the brig, and then she becoming this uneasy ally and being like an anti-hero. I think could be a good element, instead of putting all the eggs in basket of she's the villain who's out to get Voyager. Because if you go back to her season 1 roots, she actually wanted the best for Voyager, but she was looking at it from a Cardassian perspective and not a Starfleet perspective, so she was totally against the principles and the way going about doing what's best for Voyager. But in actuality, she did want to do what was best. So it would have been fascinating if they got rid of the Kazon but kept Seska on board Voyager as a sort of reoccurring uneasy anti-hero, sort of someone who's fucking things up. That could have been an interesting story arc. In fact, they decided to kill off Seska while they were filming Basics Part 2. Like, the actress found out that her character was going to be killed off right before they were going to shoot the scene, which is crazy. And that just goes to show you how unprepared they were for season 3. And this, to me, explains why the rest of it was a fucking mess, is because it's not because, oh, they didn't do the Kazon, because as I said, I agree with that decision, but it's because they made the changes, the decision to not do these things at the last minute. Like, after Pillar left, they were like, okay, let's not do this. And it's obvious to me that they didn't have the preparation or the plans to make up for, well, what direction are we actually going to go in. And so for me, like, we get some of the worst episodes of the, and I'll cover this when I do my top 30 worst episodes of Voyager. You'll notice in the top 10 now, and this wasn't necessarily the case when I did my top 5 worst for my other video, but now almost there's a lot of season 3 because after rewatching season 3, I realized it's even worse than I thought. There's like some of the worst acted, worst scripted episodes, and I could tell they've done this because they're hastily thrown together. And this season, more than any other, is also it was the most noticeable, and I think it's because the writers were, so unprepared and just so trying to get a grip on where they're going to go, is that the producers with their we need more sex and violence, and trying to push that in. And I think this is the season it was most apparent that the producers were trying to push that sort of sex appeal violence aspect to it. Like, you get the episode where Harry Kim is hanging out with all those hot chicks that try to kill him, which is very, very obvious to me. And the whole storyline they did with Kes, and this is something I'll say before, like, it made total sense to me that they wrote Kes off the show at the first episode of season, or second episode of season 4, because they destroyed her character in season 3. And I think a lot of that had to do with the producers trying to amp up her sex appeal. I mean, you can tell that by her appearance. And instead of having looking like a short-haired pixie, which was sort of like an alien, they tried to downplay her alien appearance and have her have long hair and reel up her sex appeal. And they had all these stupid storylines with her trying to get with Tom Paris, or the Doctor trying to make out with her, or her trying to get with these alien people, and instead of having her be like this in a long-term relationship with Neelix. And I know people have different opinions on how Neelix and Kes worked, but to those who didn't like their relationship, I'd say go back, watch the season 1 episode Detrell. And that episode alone, I think this was one of the best, most romantic relationships in the entire Star Trek franchise. I mean, I absolutely love the chemistry they had in that episode. Granted, outside of that episode, it didn't work quite as well. But I think that episode actually gave you a glimpse of what they could do with the Neelix and Kes relationship, and the reason why maybe people are not as happy with it is because they kept fumbling it and focusing on Neelix being jealous, which nobody wants to watch, and focusing because they kept pushing this Tom Paris and Kes thing, which is just fucking stupid. And so, yeah, they completely destroyed Kes's character in season 3. And the other thing is, of course, now, and this is where I know I'm going to get a lot of disagreement, but the Tom and B'Elanna thing. Like, before season 3, they hardly had any interaction whatsoever. Like, they were hardly ever seen on screen. And just all of a sudden, in this episode, Blood Fever, which I think is one of the worst episodes of the show, all of a sudden, there's this huge attraction to him. And ever since then, like, for the rest of season 3, they play up this romance between Tom and B'Elanna, and they stuck with this for some reason, and went all the way to the end of the show with them getting married and having a kid, which I still think that it was a huge mistake, and that these characters had no chemistry. I think B'Elanna had a lot more chemistry with Harry Kim if they were going to do anyone. And plus, I said this before, like, you have Harry Kim and Tom, who are like good friends. They're trying to play off this friendship like the Brian and Bashir friendship for Deep Space Nine. Didn't quite get as good as that, in my opinion. But you have Tom and you have Harry. Tom is the ladies' man who goes out and have adventures, and Harry seems like the more type who he had a long-term girlfriend, wants to settle down. So why in the fuck would you put Tom in a long-term relationship and have Harry be the one over having relationships with random women? That's backwards to me. It doesn't make sense. They should put Harry with B'Elanna and had Tom be the one off having random romantic encounters. It would have made way more sense. But whatever. I think this is a product of season 3 of them not knowing what the fuck they were doing, and by the time we get to season 4, which I'll actually cover much later in this video, they were stuck. They were already committed to this Tom and B'Elanna thing. I personally think they should have retconned it and been like, oh well, they're just friends, but I don't know. I suppose they don't. But yeah, you get the first run of episodes in season 3 were kind of bland. You get the didn't really know what they were doing, and then towards the middle end, you get there's a saying apparently of the trilogy of death, and I can't remember exactly which episodes they were, but there are a couple episodes in there I didn't think were that bad, like Rise. Rise is an episode I actually talk about in other videos where I'm gonna say I actually don't think it deserves all the hate it gets. Now, Rise is the episode where Neelix and Tuvok are in this, space elevator going up the atmosphere, and there's a murderer on board. It's not the best episode ever, but I actually really love the relationship between Tuvok and Neelix. Maybe it's just me because I love the moment where Neelix called Tuvok out for being a dick to him. I just love that because he's always a dick to him. So I think it's unfair. That episode gets a lot of unfair, undue hate. For me, the trilogy of death would be the 3 episodes that aired right in a row. Coda, Darkling, and trying to think of the other one. Oh, Blood Fever. Yeah. To me, these are 3 of the worst episodes of the entire show, and they aired back to back to back. And to me, that's the worst consecutive run. I'll get more into this in my worst episodes, how horrible Coda is. To me, Coda, that episode in particular, it's the one that started with the time loop between Chakotay and Janeway constantly being killed by the Vidians, and then it ended with this weird alien trying to convince Janeway she needed to die. That episode to me was the most prime example of how they didn't know what the fuck they were doing in season 3, because it was literally in the amalgamation of 4 or 5 different story ideas, and they're like, oh, well, let's just put them all into one, and it shows. It so shows. It's the biggest mess. It's the biggest poorly written piece of crap. And then you got Darkling, which is, I didn't realize that this is something I didn't realize in my recent rewatch, how awful that episode is. And Robert Picardo, I still think he's one of the best actors in the Star Trek franchise. He did shockingly bad, horrible, I'm evil, look at me. He talked like this because he wanted to be evil. It was so bad. And and they're trying to play up Cass's sex appeal in that episode. And then Blood Fever, I already talked about the bullshit with Tom and B'Elanna, and they're focusing some random Vulcan Spungfire and not Tuvok Spungfire, which is the one we actually care about. We don't give a fuck about this other guy. So, and there are lots of other really bad episodes in the sort of middle part and second half of season 3, really horrible ones. But there were Unity, I think, was a really good episode. It was the first appearance of the Borg. A lot of people sort of were disappointed with it because it's not action-packed. But once looking back at the series in retrospect, you get all the action-packed Borg episodes later on, especially the ones in later seasons, which weren't any good. But it makes you appreciate this episode more and what they were going for. And I like the sort of down-the-earth feel that this episode had. So I think that was one good episode in the sea of it was surrounded by shitty episodes. But towards the end of the season, you do get some good episodes. You get Worst Case Scenario. You get Displaced, which is pretty, there's not much to it, but it's pretty fascinating. And of course, one of the best episodes of the entire show, Scorpion. And to me, this is when. So I think towards the end of the third season is when they finally, the writers and creators finally got their shit together and finally figured out what direction they wanted to go in, which is why you get some good episodes towards the end of the season. And then that feeds into season 4, which I'll get to much later in this video on how amazing that was. But the first half of the season 3 was pretty awful too. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of bad episode after bad episode. In fact, it's funny to me that it's telling, I should say, that the only good episode that stands out in the first half of season 3 is Remember, because, and that was a very powerful episode. That was a Holocaust analogy with B'Elanna uncovering like this whole genocide thing, which to me is one of the best episodes of Voyager. But it's really telling that was actually a Next Generation script. And I'm not saying like it was an idea, like, oh, this is an idea we have for Next Generation. No, it was a fully written out, fully ready to shoot, like, revised, looked over, not first draft. It was ready to shoot script of Next Generation. So, but they thought it was too much like the Holocaust, and so when Schindler's List and stuff came out, it's like, oh, we'll appear like we're coming on the bandwagon, which I disagree. I don't actually see it as a straight Holocaust analogy. I think it speaks more to propaganda and genocide in general, so I disagree with their reasoning. So it could have been Next Generation. But anyway, it's been said that the changes they made to apply it to Voyager were actually, they did very little to change the script. So it's almost exactly the Next Generation script. They just inputted the main changes, input B'Elanna instead of Counselor Troy. And I think is a much better, I imagine what it would have been like with Counselor Troy, and it would have sucked. I think it was much better with B'Elanna because the episode focused more on the guest stars. So they actually did very little to change the script. And so it's telling to me that was the only really great episode of season 3, because they didn't come up with that. The writers didn't come up with that. They just took a script that was already written, already ready to shoot, that was already great, and just threw it into Voyager. All the other stuff that they had to come up with sucked. And stuff that should be good, like a crossover episode, guest star appearance from an original series actor with George Takei, supposed to be good, sucked. Time travel episode, time travel back to the present time. And again, I know a lot of people love these episodes, so they'll disagree with me, but I think these episodes, judging them objectively, were pretty much a failure. Pretty horrible. So time travel back to present time, supposed to be great, sucked. Oh, here's Q. Q's always good. We love Q. He worked so well in season 2, so let's bring him back. Oh my god, did that ever suck. So yeah, so season 3 to me, I just, it boggles my mind. Like, even if you like episodes like the time travel one, Future's End, and I think there's a few others people like that I didn't really care for. But even if you like those episodes, it boggles my mind how people cannot see just how chaotic the writing and just how unprepared the writers were for season 3. For me, it was like very noticeable just drop in quality. Now, as I said, you could say agree with their decision to get rid of the Kazon and not go in the storyline that Pillar wanted them to go to, which I do. Although I think the story with the Chakotay's son, like, that's the one that pissed me off the most. How they're just like at the start of the episode, start of the season, like, oh, that's not Chakotay's son. That is so obviously the writers being like, oh, actually, let's change that. Because that does not line up to what's been established. In fact, I thought it would have been more interesting to, even if you get rid of Seska and the Kazon and all that, to have Chakotay actually have a son on board Voyager, and that would really change his character, bring a new dynamic to the show. So to me, them not doing this had more to do with their Voyager's fucking desire to smash the reset button and not have any long-lasting character arcs or character changes, which is, I think, a major flaw throughout Voyager, not just season 3. So anyway, I think I talked about season 3 enough. Worst season of Voyager. So now let me move on to my number 6, which, so I guess it would call it the second worst season of Voyager, and that is season 7. Now, I talked a bit before about when I first started the series. I was wondering on my rewatch which season I think would be worse. Was it season 3 or season 7? Because I honestly wasn't sure. But after rewatching it, I think it's very clear that season 3 is worse than season 7. Because season 3 was actually worse than I thought it was on my rewatch, whereas season 7 was actually a bit better than I remember it being. But don't get me wrong, I still don't like it. I still think season 7 of Voyager to me is what everyone says Next Generation season 7 is, which I don't agree with. To me, all the things people say about Next Generation season 7, how they ran out of ideas, they weren't really trying, they seemed tired. I totally disagree, and I guess once I cover Next Generation, eventually I'll get into that, because I actually love season 7 of Next Generation. But all that stuff they say, I think applies to season 7 of Voyager. And the other thing is they weren't really invested in ending Voyager. They were just preparing for Enterprise, which sucked. So they were getting in the mindset of writing Enterprise, which is why a lot of these Voyager episodes sucked. And they just weren't trying. Now, I will say the first half of season 7, even though it started with that horrible Unimatrix bullshit, was actually fairly decent, and there were episodes in there that were better than I remember, like the critical care one, which had a very obvious allegory about our healthcare, or the U.S. healthcare system, I should say, which I actually think was really powerful, has some great character moments, and the episode with B'Elanna, this is one of the rare episodes where B'Elanna and Tom Paris' relationship actually worked, where she got pregnant and she was trying to retcon her son. Now, I think they did take it to a ridiculous extreme, but that was the episode in particular where after rewatching, I was like, actually, that is a really good episode. And then you had the stuff with the Klingons was a bit silly. And there are a lot of mediocre episodes, I should say, in the first half of season 7 that were just okay. Like, they weren't horrible, like the Hirogen thing, even though it makes no sense for the Hirogen to pop up all the fuck way out where they are now. But regardless, those were fine. And even the stupid space race thing wasn't as horrible as I remember it being. It was still not good, but yeah. So, and season 7 did have 2 amazing episodes in it, Workforce and The Void, which is 2 of my favorite of the entire show, which happened sort of mid-season. And there was also Shattered, which was what the finale should have been. It was a really awesome homage to Voyager, and sort of looking back, it was like the best clip show I've ever seen that wasn't actually a clip show, if you want to make sense, because it accomplished it's the same things that clip shows try to accomplish story-wise, by having nice callbacks and homage to previous things, but it didn't actually use clips. They actually forked up the money to to shoot new scenes, but it paid homage to what came before, which I think it was amazing, and I loved the way that played out. And as I said, Void and Workforce were amazing episodes. Now, I'm not too sure about The Void, but I do know that Workforce was written in season 6 and pretty much almost ready to shoot in season 6, and was originally meant to be shot in season 6. I think the same might be true about The Void, but I'm not sure. And to me, again, that's very telling that the 2 best episodes of the season weren't actually written in that season. They were written during season 6, and season 6 I'll get to shortly is very hit or miss, but it had great episodes, so it kind of made sense to me that the only 2 great episodes of season 7 were actually season 6 episodes. So it goes to show you the kind of low quality that season 7 had. Okay, and then you get to the second half of season 7, which was awful, and because this is when we're getting closer to Enterprise starting, because this is when they really didn't give a shit. And it's funny because I talked about Workforce and how that was an amazing, that was one of the most intense 2-parters of all Voyager, where the whole crew lost their memories, and they were had new memories of being these workers, and they didn't want to go back to Voyager. That was so intense. The very next episode after that sucked a lot. It was human error. It was about Seven and Nine had going on the holodeck with Chakotay, and these two. And this is again, I did like a whole hour and a half thing about Endgame where I did this whole section about Seven and Nine Chakotay. So I don't want to rehash that here, but no romance is more fake, contrived, worse is worsely executed. Like the whole idea, the concept behind the Chakotay 7-9 relationship actually could have been done well, and I talked about this in other videos. But the way it was executed, it was so lazy, it was so poorly done, so that human error, like in the past, like season 4, seasons 5, like the 7 of 9 learning to become social, my favorite type of episodes, they really worked. This tried that, but it made it boring, it made it dumb, it made it stupid, it made me not care. I fucking hated this episode. And after that, you just get horrible episode after horrible episode. You got this bullshit with the, Ensign Carey, who we haven't seen since, or Lieutenant Carey, sorry, who we haven't seen since season 1, just getting killed for no reason. Oh, here he is again, we haven't seen him in 5 years. Now he's dead. What the why? And that whole episode with the Friendship One and aliens being idiots and acting obtuse and wanting to kill us, contrived fucking storytelling, and then you get this thing with the barrier, with the primitive aliens. It's so boring. Anyway. So seasons, and of course, I haven't even mentioned Endgame, the last episode of Voyager, which I did in a whole entire hour and a half video on how much that episode was all god awful. That was a prime example of Rick Berman, who apparently, it seems, and I think this is why the last 3 seasons of Voyager were not as good, because this is when Rick Berman was really throwing his weight around and being like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. With Endgame, he completely blocked out all the other writers except for one, apparently, and did his own bullshit of time travel's popular, let's do that. Borg's popular, let's do that. Klingon's popular, let's do that. Barclay's popular, let's do that. Instead of trying to tell a fucking good story, which most certainly wasn't. It had more plot holes than Swiss cheese, but I'm not going to get too much into that because I already talked about this episode in depth for an hour and a half. Needless to say, that really brings down the whole quality of season 7, which is compounded by the fact that the second half was horrible. It had 2 great episodes though, and the first half of season 7 wasn't entirely bad. It was a lot of mediocre, okay, this episode's okay sort of episodes. So that's why it's not as bad as season 3, but it's still one of the bad seasons of Voyager. Anyway, let me move on to my number 5, which is in fact season 5. Now, season 5 of Voyager, this was, as I said in my coverage of season 5, this was the bland season. It wasn't a particularly bad season. It was fine. I mean, we got some good episodes. I like Warhead. I think that's an underrated episode. Really great acting performances between Robert Picardo and Garrett Wong as Harry Kim and the Doctor. And the Doctor, actually not the Doctor, he's just taken over by this really intelligent bomb. And to me, I think maybe people don't like this episode as much because it's very reminiscent of some season 2 episodes like Dreadnought or whatever. But to me, it does it better than those episodes did because of the performances. Maybe it's just me. It seems to me not just with Star Trek but across the board that I'm liking certain episodes better because of acting. I'm looking at acting more, and I think the acting in this episode is just superb. And then what else you got with season 5? You got Think Tank, which actually was a really good episode. I think it had potential to be better potentially. But it was pretty good. And another thing on my rewatch, the episode Gravity with Tuvok stuck on the planet with, shuttlecraft crashing, which again, such a cliched, boring storyline, which is probably why I dismissed that episode originally. But watching it again, I realized that it's actually a really amazing drama character story of Tuvok. And it is interesting because, I'll say this again and again, that Tuvok's character sort of went by the wayside in later seasons. So it's interesting the character that explores him the most was actually in the later season 5. Although it's season 5, season 6 and 7 is where they got even worse and totally fucked up Tuvok's character. Don't get me started. In season 7 did that. But so that was a great The Captain Proton stuff, I think, is a bit overrated. I mean, it's fun, but the whole Bride of Chaotica episode had some of the worst sort of plot I've ever seen. People are like, well, it's not about a plot, it's a comedy. I'm sorry, it's a Star Trek episode. I'm going to judge it on the plot. Comedy was good, I'll grant you that. I would laugh my ass off at a lot of the jokes, and I will say it was one of the funniest episodes, but that had so many plot holes that just pissed me off. And I talked about this before when I covered this episode, as this is the episode where I go from being, oh, that's hilarious, to angry, pissed off at how horrible the writing is. So I have mixed feelings about that episode. And what else are we getting? Season 5 has one of my all-time favorite episodes, Drone, which was, I think, the last great Borg episode before the Borg went downhill. Now, let me get into that, because Season 5, I think, was the start of the destruction of the Borg, because a lot of people who are like-minded like me, or people who hate Voyager, because I don't hate Voyager, will point to Voyager as destroying the Borg and totally fucking up the Borg. For me, I actually think I love what they did with the Borg in Season 4 and the first half of Season 5, like with the Drone, which is I think it was, to me, I actually called it the best Borg episode of the entire Star Trek franchise. It jerked me to tears. It was such a great character story for 7 of 9. It was the best use of the Borg, in my opinion. But we get to halfway through the Season 5. We get Dark Frontier, and I'll get to this. I'll talk more about Dark Frontier on my worst list. And it's funny because I watched other YouTubers, one in particular who I really admire and agree with a lot of his opinion. Dark Frontier is one of his all-time favorite. I think maybe he had a number 2 all-time favorite episodes, or maybe tied for number 1 if I remember correctly. But to me, this is one of the worst episodes. This is the episode that killed the Borg, and so after, this episode, the Borg on Voyager sucked. And the main thing is bringing back the Borg Queen. This is something my brother talks about a lot, Apkentanko, on his channel, about how he hated the movie First Contact. I didn't hate the movie First Contact, but he hated it because of the Borg Queen. And he's saying the Borg Queen is a bad concept. And that part of it I'll agree with. But I think they I'll let it slide a bit more in First Contact because of some of the other things in that movie. I don't think the Borg Queen completely ruins it, but she completely ruins Voyager. And bringing the Borg Queen back, which is Dark Frontier was the first time they did it, that's kind of the catalyst. It's not the only thing, though. It's the fact that they turn the Borg, they lose that menacing, holy shit, it's the Borg, we're all going to die feel that they had in Scorpion in Season 4. And instead they become these like James Bond type cartoonish villains, and like that Borg Queen going, Janeway. And Dark Frontier in particular revealed that that the whole thing of 7 being on Voyager was just a plan from the Borg Queen to plant her there, which is, the writers think I'm a fucking moron. Fuck you, writer. How dare you treat me like such an idiot to actually expect me to buy such blatant bullshit. Pisses me off. And I don't understand how people can like that episode. I mean, I get what they were trying to do with the dark character study of 7 and 9, but they totally they fucking take a giant dump over the whole Star Trek continuity, not just Voyager continuity. And this is what I'm talking about. People complaining about Discovery. Discovery's not canon. It spits all over canon. My friend, Discovery cannot light a candle to fucking Dark Frontier when it comes to taking a shit on canon. This is the biggest champion of not giving a fuck about continuity. In fact, the writers themselves of this episode specifically said, we do not care about continuity. They said this, and it shows, and it sucks, and it's not just, people say, oh, well, you're just caring about continuity. Just judge the episode on its own merits. On its own merits, it's cheesy. I'm sorry. But so, ever since then, after this, we get more horrible Borg episodes like Unimatrix, and other bullshit. The only exception, there's an exception in season 6, which is Survival Instinct, but that was written by Ronald D. Moore, so that's probably why that's an exception, because it's not following the same Borg Queen bullshit. So that was a really negative on season 5 for me. But other than that, it had a lot of episodes like the disease with Harry Kim saying, it was so dumb saying, oh, they're giving him shit for having sex with an alien, when everyone throughout Star Trek has done this all the time, especially Kirk, and Janeway herself has done this, and she's being such a fucking hypocrite. And these are symptoms, and it's kind of like, to me, season 5 had sort of the same problem as season 3, but to a lesser degree. Whereas the writers were trying to reinvent the show, and they were looking at some characters like Janeway and Harry Kim and saying that their characters are not coming off very strong, which I can definitely see that point of view. But so they were trying to come up with specific character traits for these characters, but did not jive with what we've seen before, like what they did with Harry Kim and Disease, and what they did with Janeway in the premiere episode, Night, I think it's called, where she's regretting her decisions of the past. I just did not buy these character moves, and it felt like, and throughout season 5, it felt like they were trying to force these character traits into these characters. And Chakotay likes boxing. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the worst episode behind Endgame, like the biggest piece of crap of all of Star Trek franchise. I would put this in the top 5 worst episodes of the entire Star Trek franchise. I don't know if I want to say worse. I think it's way worse than Threshold. Is the fight where, I don't know, I take enjoyment from watching this episode because I laughed my ass. The first time I was laughing my ass off and stuff that it wasn't intended to be funny. It's just so horribly written. But that being said, as I said, season 5 has strong points. The drone being a major one of them. And I think in general, a lot of the season 5 episodes were okay. There weren't that many horrible ones, like the fights one. And you have the one where they destroyed species. Oh yeah, it's not enough that they destroyed the Borg. They also destroyed species 8472 with that whole, because they were just menacing, we want to destroy everything. They're like a xenophobic, almost like space Nazis who didn't give a fuck about anything else, any other life forms, and they are all inferior. It's like the way we look at ants. That was an interesting concept, but it's all just a misunderstanding. We thought that you, the humans, wanted to kill us because you made an alliance with our enemies. Horseshit! 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 And that episode was so stupid, and then them dressed up as Starfleet and acting like, oh, we're in Starfleet. Anyway, so for me, season 5, it's kind of middling. I give it a 5 out of 10. So it's good parts, bad parts. It's not completely horrible like season 3 and season 7, but yeah. Okay, so then we come to season 4 on my list, which is season 6. So now we get all of the end seasons out of the way. Season 5, 6, and 7. Towards the bottom of my list, because as season 6, I don't know. I talked about this in my review for season 6, where it's very hit or miss. It's like, to me, it seems like there was a lot of conflict in the writers' room. There were some really good writers and there were some really bad writers, or maybe there were just maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe it was just some episodes where they were able to gel, come together, and make good episodes, but because they were forced to pump out 24 episodes a season, other episodes they didn't pay as much attention to, and they just tuned out or whatever. I mean, you could say you could have that problem with any season of these 24 episode shows that aired in the 90s, but I think it's even more apparent here with season 6. So actually, I do think, I mean, this is just total pure speculation, but it seems to me there was at least 1 or 2 really bad writers in that writers' room who were kind of fucking things up for all the other writers. But that's just my total speculation. It's funny because Brian Fuller, of course, who'd go on to be a well-known showrunner for Hannibal and American Gods, and of course who got Star Trek Discovery started, he was one of the writers for season 6 of Voyager, and he wrote a lot of really horrible episodes, quite frankly. Some of the worst the show's done, like the Fairhaven and the fucking Spirit Folk with the, the Irish holodeck thing, like pub. What? Oh my god. What? See, so I can't really get behind him. I don't know. Maybe he became a better writer after he left Voyager, but god damn, those episodes sucked. And you get a lot of like this crap, like early inches of the Enterprise suckiness, like the One Small Step, where they had this like, astronaut. They find this old astronaut in a stupid space anomaly. It was just really boring, and I didn't care about that. And yeah. What else did they do in season 6? I don't know. They had some really, like the last half of season 6 was a lot of bland, like, oh, let's have these aliens who are hustlers who sort of con people and they pretend to be Janeway and the crew. That was kind of boring. And let's have this, ensign who never appeared before. Let's create this ensign who died a year ago and bring her back as a dead person. Or like aliens who bring dead people back to life. And yet she's the love interest for Harry Kim. They went to academy together. Yet we never fucking heard of her before. They do shit like that. It pisses me off. And so yeah, we get a lot of really bad episodes in season 6. Yet at the same time, we get amazing episodes. We have some of the best episodes of the entire show. So it goes back and forth in quality. I think for at least the first 3 quarters of the season. The last quarter of the season was pretty much all bad, to be honest. They sort of lost the plot there. But as I said, we got the Ronald D. Moore written Borg episode, which was amazing, great, intense character episode for 709 with, survival instincts with the triad of Borg who were like linked in this together. That was great. And we had, of course, Blink of an Eye, one of the most like fan favorite episodes of Voyager, and one of my personal favorites as well. Where, when I first heard the concept of this episode, I was like, oh, we've seen that. They're just doing things we've seen before. What's wrong with them? But the episode itself, actually, when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, this is really original. This is not something I've seen before. This is a really great idea that really intrigues. This is like the science fiction aspect of Voyager put to best use, where, the planet that goes super fast and Voyager's above orbit. And it was a really unconventional way of doing storytelling on Voyager, doing an episode where it's it's focusing more on the guest cast of these other alien culture, how it goes fast from being cavemans to being more modern technology, and of course the Orville would rip this off completely, but I'm not going to talk about the Orville. But yeah, this is a really great episode. Absolutely loved it. And I know some people will be like, well, Mark, that's unfair of you to say because this episode actually ripped off this book called Dragon's Egg. But no, I talked about this before. This is really different from the book. It has a Star Trek feel for it. It just takes the same basic concept, and I totally fight the idea that anything that takes the same basic concept is ripping it off, because tons shows, movies, films, everything does this. Sorry. It's when you have a concept that's not that common like this one, it does seem people are more likely to say, oh, it's ripping it off. But it's not. It's just taking where the Orville actually did rip off this episode in specifically, in particular, not just the general concept. But anyway, digression. Hold on. Let me pause this for 1 second. And then you also had episodes like Memorial, which was another amazingly powerful episode. One of the best the show's ever done. It was packed a real emotional punch. Now, there's a lot of controversy. This episode's kind of polarizing. There's a lot of people who don't like it because they think it sends the wrong message. But I talked about, I did a full-length review of this episode, and I talked about how, I respect people's opinions on who think it's putting out a certain message, but I personally disagree. That's not how I've read it. I read it a different way, and you can watch my full review for that episode if you want to know specifically what I'm talking about. And then there's also Riddles, which I actually think is a really underappreciated, great Neelix, another great Neelix and Tuvok episode. Unlike that other one that sucked, which I won't get into here because I'm sick of talking about it, but the season 2 one, excuse me. Anyway, Riddles is amazing, a great, I love what they did with Tuvok in this episode. It's a great character story. So yeah, I think Season 6 did a lot of things right, and it did a lot of things wrong, so it makes sense for me. It would land sort of in the middle of Season 4, ranking number 4, in my top 7 ranking, sort of right in the middle there. But as I said, the last 3 seasons of Voyager is where the show got more concerned with, there's this reviewer I used to read called Cynic's Corner, who would every episode, he was reviewing mainly season 6, and every episode would be like, oh, so Voyager's attacked by four-head aliens. Some weird four-head aliens attack Voyager, which is basically it. You go back and watch, season 5, 6, and 7. I think 6 and 7 in particular are really bad about this. They have to have your mandatory battle. Even sometimes it doesn't even make sense. You get episodes like Dragon the Seas, which actually work as a battle episode. The battles and that makes sense. But other episodes, it's just it's thrown as the B plot that doesn't even need to be there. And so this is the issue I had with the last. And plus, the last 3 seasons of Voyager seemed less interested in character development. Unless your name was the Doctor 709. All the other characters just became bland, and more concerned with, let's have these action sequences, and it was more episodic. It lost the sense of community that we had in the earlier seasons. So now, that leads me in to get into my number 3. Now we're getting into my favorite seasons of Voyager, and I'll start with season 2. Those who've seen I did the rankings for seasons before in my Voyager review, I actually had season 2 at number 1. So this is another one that actually changed for me after the rewatch. I realized, okay, well, maybe season 2 actually isn't my favorite season, and I actually dropped it to number 3, but I still really love season 2. But I can get some people's complaints about this season, because this is where they did the Kazon the most. And I don't know, I'm against the Kazon as a whole. As a species, they're just rip-offs of Klingons that should have never been done. It comes off as just rehashing the same thing. But some of the episodes that the Kazon appeared in I actually really liked. I really liked the stuff with Seska. I mean, who doesn't like Seska? Excuse me. And also the alliances one, where now I know a lot of people, some people hate that episode Alliances because of the way it ended, and I'll agree the ending kind of sucked. It could have been better, but I still love that episode for what it did in the first 3/4 of it, and the ending didn't totally ruin it for me. It kind of that's not the best way they could have ended it. They could have ended it better by having long-term story arcs. But again, this gets back to Voyager, wanting to slam that reset button and not wanting to commit to any long-term story arcs, which frankly I think gets worse in the later seasons than it is in here. So I'm more likely to give it a pass. Plus, I've heard the really odd thing of people saying that season 2 was the one where each episode didn't really feel connected to the others, and there was no character development, and that you could watch each episode in a vacuum. Where I cannot possibly disagree with that more. I mean, to a certain extent, but I actually think this issue gets way worse in later seasons. Season 5, 6, and 7 is much worse than it was in season 2. Season 2, you had that sense of community still that was built in season 1. Where it felt and you had one person in particular said once that, if you discount the Michael Jonas thing. What do you mean? You can't discount the Michael Jonas thing. That was a huge step where it had a storyline that lasted 5 or 6 episodes, where it would touch in with this ongoing storyline of a Kazon spy. I mean, nothing like that was done. I mean, I suppose you could say in season 6 they had a thing with each of the Borg children, but I mean, okay, that was kind of like that, but still, it wasn't as sort of involved as it was in this. And here you define characters like Chakotay, Tuvok, Harry Kim. Well, maybe not Harry Kim as much, but but definitely Chakotay, Neelix, and Tuvok come off as really well-rounded, strong characters. And B'Elanna, that's another one. She kind of became just Tom Paris's wife in later seasons. Where here, she was her own character. She was fully developed. These characters were really well-rounded in season 2, and sure, there were a lot of misses in season 2, like the first run of episodes in season 2, which apparently were originally written for season 1. They all sucked. Like the stuff with the 37s and the projection thing where they're trying to be all psychedelic with the Doctor. It just doesn't work. And Nog being a Kazon. Oh my god. Oh fuck. I'll talk about that episode when I get to my worst episodes. So you got a lot of shit like that didn't work. But I think it did find its footing and made a lot of really great character stories. Now I know, like Tattoo, that gets a lot of hate. A lot of people hate that episode and for kind of whitewashing Native American history, and I can totally see that point of view. But I don't think that was the episode's intention. Moreover, I don't think it's as bad as some of what the original series did, to be frank. Also, Chakotay's character is really, like, you get that connection, the flashbacks with him and his father. Like, I appreciate that a lot more in the rewatch. Because I actually used to hate this episode, too, when it first came out for many years. But rewatching it now with sort of an older perspective, I can see how well, especially knowing how bland Chakotay comes later in later seasons, how well this develops his character. And the stuff with, Kes was interesting too. This season 2, more than any others, played off of her telekinetic and her abilities, her psychic abilities, and her studying with Tuvok. This was a very fascinating storyline, and her relationship with Neelix comes out a couple times, maybe not as well as season 1, but still better in season 3, which totally fucking destroyed her character, but I already talked about that. So season 2 has a lot of great episodes, a lot of my favorite episodes, like Deadlock. I think that is a very underrated episode. As one that I'll talk about this again when I get to my favorite episodes, where there's 2 Captain Janeway, there's 2 Voyagers, there's 2 Janeways, and you get to see the Vidians come in and kill everyone. I mean, to me that's a Yesterday Enterprise level good. I absolutely love that episode so much, and that's what season 2 brings you. And it also has other, really great episodes. Like Life Signs, where we get the romance between the Doctor. This, to me, was one of the best. Like, this is the first time in the show that they actually tried to, they tried in season 1 to develop the Doctor's character, but they didn't quite work. Here they totally hit. Have an amazing commentary about beauty and how this affects people's appearance, and how the Doctor is sort of seeing through that. It was such a great romance, and then you get more continuity. I totally don't get these people who say, season 2 has no continuity. Fuck off! You get more continuity where she reappears later when they go to the Vidians for help to cure Janeway and Chakotay. Season 2 has a lot of continuity. I'm sorry, season 2 has a lot of character development, way more than freaking other later seasons. Sorry, getting a bit heated on this. Sorry about that, but I just love season 2. Now, as I said, I dropped it from Resistance. I'm talking about Resistance. This is another one of the underrated great episodes of Voyager. It was such a touching ending. It was so depressing, where Janeway befriends this old man who, thinks that she's his daughter, but his daughter's actually dead and died tragically. And the way, as he's dying, she says, "Yes, I am your daughter." Oh my god, that was one of the best touching moments of the entire Star Trek franchise. But anyway, like I said, I had dropped season 2 from my favorite to number 3, so from number 1 to number 3, because there are a lion's share of bad episodes in the season, if I'm being completely fair. There's the stupid, like I said, I talked about earlier how they try to play up this sort of, Neelix being jealous of Tom Paris getting with Kesting, which that's a fault with season 2, and I have to admit that. We got that in several episodes, which was horrible. We got some throwaway anomaly being weird shit, like with Twisted, which was just dumb. And you got Tuvix. I won't get into that, but fuck that episode. That's all I'll say. You got Threshold, and then with Threshold, like, again, I had someone once say to me, well, season 2, how can you say season 2 is great? Threshold was in it. First of all, it's just one episode. And, I'll get to this when I get to my worst episodes. Was it one of the worst episodes of Voyager? Yes. Was it the worst? I don't think so. I think there's actually much worse. It's like the fight I was just talking about, I actually think is way worse. And, of course, in-game, but totally different reasons why that's bad. But I do have to admit it did have a lot of bland and bad episodes mixed in with the good episodes. It's kind of like season 6, but to me, like, the overall arcing character arcs and character stories and character development was much stronger here than it was in season 6. And overall, like, the tone of the good episodes were even better than the good episodes in season 6, which is why I hold this much higher than I hold season 6. So, but yeah, it does have its faults, like Nog as a Kazon. God damn it. But yeah, so season 2 is my number 3. So now let me get to my number 2, which is season 1. Now, season 1, I think, gets an even worse rap. To me, season 1 was one of the best seasons of the show because it was before the producers and the executives started stepping in and be like, sex and violence, sex and violence, sex and violence. And here, you get a lot of episodes that are more character-based. And I think... And this is a trait I find, of my opinion, with a lot of shows, a lot of movies. I love plots, I love complexity, I love storylines that make you think, but I also love character stories. That is the main thing, I think, one of the main things I'm attracted to if it gets strong, and that's why I don't care much for the later seasons, because I don't think unless your name's 7 or 9 and a Doctor, the character stories do not come out strong in the last 3 seasons. And season 7 doesn't even come out for 7 and 9. They kind of fucked that up too. So, season 1 had the strongest character stories. It wasn't all about, let's have 4-head aliens attack the ship constantly. There were several episodes in here, like my favorite episodes of season 1, nobody attacks. Like, Eye of the Needle, where there's this wormhole takes you back to the Alpha Quadrant, but they find out it's 30 years in the past, and it's the Romulans. Oh, the Romulans, they're going to attack. No! Janeway, finds a way to converse with the Romulan and identify and relate to the Romulan. Get this Romulan, who's like an enemy species, on board to understand the Voyager crew's plight. That was amazing. I mean, to me, that's why Eye of the Needle would be one of my favorite Voyager episodes all time, because this is what Voyager could have been like, and if the producers stuck their big fucking noses out and be like, sex and violence, sex and violence, sex and violence, and you have really calm, slow-paced, really well-written, well-acted character stories. And another really prime example of this is Prime Factors. I said Prime. Which is another episode that actually, after my recent rewatch, I was totally underrating this episode myself. I forgot about how amazing this episode is. Because here, Voyager meets, a race of Italian French people who are kind of like Risons. They take them to a pleasure planet, and they say, I want you, to feel pleasure. But then they examine the fickleness of that, and how when it comes time to actually helping the Voyager crew in any meaningful way, they don't really care. It's all about them meeting stuff, having new stories, new people, it's about them getting bored with their own lives, so wanting to bring in new people to freshen things up, and they don't really actually care about helping them. and the interaction, the character stories you get in this episode with the crew, how because there's a split between the crew, how people want to get home. And you think this split is Maquis and Starfleet because B'Elanna and Seska want to use this device to get home, even though it goes against the Prime Directive. But then Carrie comes in and is like, no, I'm totally on board with you guys. I don't care, Starfleet, Maquis, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. And then Tuvok, actually, he catches them and they're like, oh, we're fucked. But he actually is on board with them and helps them. I mean, that's amazing. I love, and the character dynamics and seeing the hurt in Janeway's, when she confronts B'Elanna and Tuvok about this, like, how could you betray me? Such rich, good character stories. And again, the main point is you have these aliens who are not attacking Voyager. They're not attacking Voyager. They're not four-headed aliens attacking. The conflict was a lot more complex. And that is amazing storytelling, character-based, and the stuff with, again, we get to reveal that Seska is actually Kazon, which was amazingly pulled off, infiltration thing, because I love how they did it with a supporting character, because they're not going to do it with the main character. But it's not just a one-off, like, oh, let's invent this character for this episode, like they did with the Ensign Ballard or whatever. No, this is a character we've seen throughout since the beginning of the show, and she's actually a Cardassian, and she's working with the Kazon. And again, this episode is amazing because of the character interactions, the way that they build the relationship between her and Chakotay. Now, that was invented for this episode, but I'll give it a pass because it actually really works. And the way it affects the characters and how it affects the community feel dynamic on Voyager. And this is something that later, even season 2 a bit, lost this sense of community, which Voyager actually would be, because they're a lone ship all by itself. It's totally different from any other Star Trek show, because it's not like they can just go to a starbase and restock or whatever. They're trapped in this one ship alone, like other side of the galaxy. So it makes total sense that this would be more like a community, and you get this community feel to it. And I love episodes like this that explore that, and they do such a great job. And it's just, and again, getting the Seska, like, that's why she's the best villain, because she's not just evil. She actually wanted to help Voyager crew, and she gave an amazing speech that totally gives you from the Cardassian perspective of how to survive in the Delta Quadrant. And as I said, I think you get to feel that she actually wanted to help the Voyager crew at this stage. It wasn't until later that they actively tried to stop her that she wanted to stop them, because, like, well, you're trying to fuck my shit up, so I'll fuck your shit up. But here, I genuinely believe she wanted to do what was best for Voyager. It was out of self-interest, no doubt, because that's a Cardassian, but she was looking at it from a Cardassian's perspective and not a Starfleet's perspective. So that was amazing. You get some, like Jetrell, another amazing episode that explores Neelix's background, and it makes him a very fleshed out, and it tells you, I love it how they explore how he comes off like this comedic goofball, but in reality, a lot of comedic goofballs have a depressing story behind them, and they were just using comedy or goofiness to sort of cover for that. And I love that, and I love how it's explored in this episode, which was amazing drama, and it was one of the best, like, well done, the use of flashbacks. It was just a great episode overall. And yeah, so you get a lot of, even through some of these other mediocre episodes of season 1, you have that sense of character development, that sense of community that really worked. Now, you get some shitty episodes like Ex Post Facto, which was their attempt to do a noir-type mystery that was just awful. And you had a lot more of the generic throwaway anomaly, like the parallax and bullshit like that you don't care about. But for the most part, season 1, actually really powerful season. My second favorite season of Voyager. Okay, so finally, let me get to my number 1 favorite season of Voyager, which, process of elimination you can figure out. Also, if you've seen the video I did for the season, I talked a lot about how this was the best season of Voyager, and that is season 4. As I said, this is something I actually realized on a rewatching this season, just how amazing season 4 is. Now, you could say, like, this is when they brought in 7 of 9, this is when they brought in the Borg, but really, season 4 didn't actually, other than Scorpion, didn't really do Borg episodes. It did 7 of 9 episodes and explored the Borg through her perspective, but it didn't, like, flat out, other than Scorpion, do, like, a Borg episode. But the thing with season 4 is, I'm of the mind that even if they didn't bring in the Borg, even if they didn't bring in 7 of 9, even if they kept the same crew, like even Kes, whose character they destroyed in season 3, that they would have been able to save her in season 4. That season 4, it's just, the writing for each episode was just at its best. To me, season 4, that would be comparable to season 3 of Next Generation. Not season 3 of Voyager, that was shit. But season 4 of Voyager is what season 3 of Next Generation was. Because the first 2 seasons of Next Generation complete and all their shite. And you got season 3, which was the best season of Next Generation. That completely, it took this shitty show and completely made something beautiful out of it. And made like powerful episode after powerful episode. That's what season 4 did. Season 4 had this really shitty show after season 3 where the writers didn't know what the fuck they were doing. The character development was all over the place. And it made something beautiful out of it. It managed to just make great. And the reason why I would put this above seasons 1 and 2, as much as I love the sense of community, the sense of character development, the script writing was better in season 4. Like, from a storytelling perspective, each episode was better. Each episode wasn't like I said with season 1, there was a lot of average episodes, but there was a sense of community, which is why I loved it. With season 4, not so many average episodes. Almost all the episodes are great. And there's not actually any horrible episodes too. Like, all the seasons, including season 1 and 2, had some really bad episodes, where season 4, like, to me, the worst you get is like, what's that one called? Retrospect. With, that was kind of pointless, with the 7 of 9 accusing the guy of stealing her nanoprobes when you find out it wasn't the case. That was kind of a blunder to me. And then the random thoughts one, which seemed kind of pointless. Where, we're stealing thoughts telepathically. But both of those episodes weren't horrible. They were just kind of, or like the Demon or the One as well towards the end of the season. But again, those episodes weren't horrible. They were just, So if that's the worst they could get, then that's an amazing season. And you throw those episodes aside, you just got amazing episodes. You got fucking the 7 of 9 story arc done in hard. Like, even in bad episodes where they did that bullshit with Tom and B'Elanna being in spacesuits, fuck that. Even in that episode, you had great 7 of 9 character development as she's learning to deal with these, learning to feel what sympathy is as she comes across an alien race that the Borg had pretty much wiped out. Amazing storytelling. And her whole story, the episode The Raven, where she discovers a ship where her parents were, and she's like remembering what it's like to be that little girl. Oh, such great acting too. Like, it's just, everything came together perfectly in season 4. And of course it has my all-time favorite Voyager episode, Year of Hell, which was just amazing. You got great performances. Kurtwood Smith, amazing actor, good guest appearance. But this, more of that, to see, it had some of the most touching moments in the entire series. To see Voyager, falling apart at the seams, just completely falling apart, and it's just the way it was done. So good. So good. Best episode, of course I'll talk about that a bit more in my top 50 best episodes, and the Herodian, like, I don't know, the Killing Game was kind of just a cheap excuse to do World War II, but it was still an interesting episode. I wouldn't say it sucked, but the other Herodian episodes, like Prey, where they're facing down Species 8472, that's another episode where on my rewatch I was like, wow, I was not giving this episode enough credit as it deserved. That was so amazing. You had Tony Todd, Kern, or Jake, the older Jake Sisko from that one episode of Deep Space Nine, playing a Hirogen, and just the character conflict is created in 709, where she wanted the Hirogen to kill Species A472, but she was told by Janeway not to. I mean, such powerful stuff. And you get to make contact with the Alpha Quadrant for the first time, with the Doctor going, fight the Romulans or whatever, but to have them get the letters and actually have that connection where they actually hear back from family members for the first time, and Chakotay and B'Elanna learn that the Maquis are wiped out. Amazing character stuff. Like, that's why when I talk about how Voyager in later seasons forgot about character development and just went about action. I always, if you notice throughout the video, I always say season 5, 6, and 7. I never included season 4 because season 4 is not included in that, because there's amazing character development. Like, you get that episode Nemesis with Chakotay. It's all about Chakotay, and they still have this. He's a fleshed out character, and it makes total sense that he's brainwashed and indoctrinated into this alien fight, and the twist in that episode was fucking amazing. I just love season 4. I think it's one of the best seasons of all of the Star Trek franchise. I mean, the writers just got their shit together. I mean, this is what I was saying by the end of season 3, because season 3, I think the reason it sucked was because they didn't have enough time to sort of react and prepare, and they were just thrown into it, and they started to get their shit together towards the end of season 3. Then they came up with season 4, where it just gelled. Michael Puller, he wasn't involved. They didn't need him. They just gelled. They knew what they were doing. And even though the producers were, saying, oh, let's force this new character and we put her in this skin-tight outfit to make her sexy, the writers took that and okay, we'll have the sex appeal. We'll give her character. We'll give her development. We'll give her intelligence. We'll make her a fully developed, relatable, interesting, fascinating character to watch. That's amazing. They took that interference of the producers trying to enforce sex appeal on them and made good storytelling, good character development out of it. That's impressive. That is great. That's unlike season 3, where the sex appeal push thing obviously just interfered and totally fucked their shit up. Here they took that and made something out of it. Great, amazing. Just simply amazing. I'm gushing about season 4, so definitely my favorite season of Voyager. Anyway, let me wrap up this video here. Thank you so much for you guys who actually stuck through all the way to the end. As I said, I don't really give a shit about timing in these episodes. I'm just going to babble on for as long as I feel like. So that is it for my Star Trek Voyager 7 Seasons of Voyager ranked video. I will be back later in the week to do my top 30 worst episodes of Voyager and top 50 best episodes of Voyager. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I do many other videos and other shows like Game of Thrones, The Expanse, Discovery, and more. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.